Welcome to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Christy Hugic. Throughout my own journey, I've been blessed to form deep connections with incredible souls who've enriched my life with their insights. Today, I'm excited to extend these connections to you, bridging the gap between impactful messages and inspiring messengers. On this podcast, with the help of my guests, we're set to explore a diverse range of topics, delving into nutrition, fitness, holistic health, and the power of mindset. Our goal is to ignite transformative discussions that create a ripple effect of positive change in your life and the lives of others. Today, we're diving into a topic that's likely part of your daily routine. In fact, it might just be sitting in front of you right now as you listen to this podcast. I'm talking about coffee. Wouldn't you like to know, is it your friend or foe? How much is just right? And what factors should you consider when choosing your coffee? And if you're not drinking it, you might be after you hear this podcast. Today, we have a very special guest to help us unravel the myths and highlight the benefits of Java. Andrew Salisbury, the visionary founder of Purity Coffee, will share the science behind crafting a health-friendly brew. Through Purity, Andrew has helped people with GI distress and mold allergies enjoy coffee worry-free. I can personally attest to how Purity allowed me to rekindle my love for coffee while prioritizing my well-being. You're about to hear the wisdom that will make that morning cup of joe even more exciting. Andrew, it is such a pleasure to have you here. I'm really honored that you took the time out to come on the podcast today. I'm big on the why behind everything. And so I think you have a really strong why. So I'd love to start there with you. What would you say your why is when it comes to what you have created with Purity and what you do with Purity Coffee?
Yeah, I mean, it's my background really has nothing to do with coffee. It's been software, and I spent some time traveling with my wife and daughter after I sort of transitioned from that company. And my wife started having some health issues, really mainly low energy, difficult to get out of bed in the morning, and she would wake up feeling tired. And so we tried to do lots of different things, starting with the traditional sort of, normal sort of looking at diet, going to doctor's visits, that sort of thing. And then I sort of fixated for a little while on the fact that she was drinking a lot of coffee, as a lot of us do. She was sort of self-medicating, using coffee to get out of bed in the morning. And, originally from England, I'm a tea drinker. Used to be a tea drinker. And so I was trying to persuade her to give up her coffee. And naturally, she was very resistant. And she said, look, I require some real proof. If you want to show me that the coffee is bad for me, then, give me some evidence. So I met two professors at the Institute of Coffee Studies in Vanderbilt, and basically just asked them, okay, give me the truth. Is coffee good for you or bad for you? And what was interesting is they gave me this really long shopping list of the health benefits of coffee that I just wasn't aware of. And, starting with the number one source of antioxidants in the American diet. If you drink 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day, that's where you're getting the most antioxidants. From liver disease, liver prevention of type 2 diabetes. And it was a very, very long list. And that's sort of what got me down this path, because the next obvious question is, great, fantastic, I lose this argument with my wife. What coffee should I buy her? What coffee is making every decision based on health? And there wasn't any that they could point to. They could tell me what I should focus on, but they couldn't tell me a company that was doing it. And that sort of got us down that initial path of just saying, okay, something that people do every single day, without fail. If you're a coffee drinker, you never forget to have your morning cup of coffee. Why is there not more concentration on the quality of coffee that they drink for health?
Yeah, and it's amazing too, because I think all of us that are in these kinds of spaces, we all have our own story that led us to the path that we're down. And so I really, I loved your story and how it came about. And I think you touched on something that listeners do not always know or understand. There's so much conflicting info out in the world. Yeah. This is good for you. This is bad for you. And you can find whatever side of that argument you want to be on. So many people want to know, is caffeine, is it good or bad for me? So how does a person, how would you say that a person can figure that out for themselves?
And it's interesting because you went to sort of one of the original problems, which is that we have to separate in people's mind the idea that coffee is not caffeine and vice versa. Obviously, it contains caffeine, and that's the thing that a lot of people fixate on, but it also contains a very high level of a thing called chlorogenic acids, which are the antioxidants in the coffee. So antioxidants that you want are chlorogenic acids, trigonelline, caffeine, kawiol, some of the oils and the lipids on coffee. So step number one is to understand that it's more than just caffeine that you should fixate on. It could also be the health benefits of the coffee. So to answer your question, I would say this. You have to trust your body. There is no better indicator about whether something is good or bad for you than how it reacts in your body. But before you dismiss coffee in general, make sure that the coffee you're looking for avoids the bad stuff and maximizes the good stuff. So what does that mean? Avoid the bad stuff means that you don't want pesticides on your coffee. If you look at a coffee cherry, it looks a little bit like a grape. It's porous. It's often treated with pesticides in countries that don't have the same level of oversight that the US does. So you really don't want your coffee to be treated with pesticides. It needs to be organic. It needs to be specialty grade, and that means that the highest grade of coffee, for the simple reason that the lower grades of coffee have what's called primary defects, and all of those link to health concerns, whether you roast the coffee, there are insect damage, chipped or broken beans. So, specialty coffee is very important. And the roast level is important because as you roast coffee, you roast away the antioxidants in the coffee. So while the caffeine is not going to vary hugely, the amount of antioxidants vary a lot, and you can create negative compounds in the roast. So I suppose the answer to the question is this. Watch your body, watch how your body reacts to the coffee, but make sure you're selecting a coffee that's high in antioxidants, and it is organic, regeneratively farmed if possible. Look for things like Smithsonian bird friendly and specialty grade.
Yeah, and I think that leads us probably to our next question to talk about something else that I don't think the average person really understands, and that's that coffee can contain high levels of mold. And I think the world gravitates to mold is something visible I can see, and if I see something moldy in my fridge, I'm throwing it out, I'm not eating it, but it's not quite the same in coffee, and mycotoxins can't be seen. So I want to talk about the importance of the stringent standards that you have with third-party mold testing for these mycotoxins. So can you talk about the mycotoxins and why they have become prominently talked about now in the coffee industry?
Yeah, and it is sort of interesting. It is an important conversation, but the good news is it's an easy conversation to have a fix for. So, anytime you've got a humid climate, there's naturally moisture in the air, you're picking a cherry, you're leaving it by the side of the road, and all the way through the processing of that coffee, you want to make sure that mold never develops. Now, mold is not necessarily the problem because mold burns off in the roast. What doesn't burn off in the roast are the mycotoxins which eat the mold. So we can't ever let mold develop. So a lot of this is standards and food processing and the way that the coffee it goes through those high levels of standards. And then it's also testing. So you don't want mold to develop because it can lead to things like ochratoxin A, which is very bad for the kidneys. And the problem is that when people say, well, it burns off in the roast, it doesn't. It only burns off at a high enough level where you're basically eradicating all of the antioxidants in the coffee. So effectively, the safe kill step of mycotoxins is to roast or over roast the coffee, but then you're going to have another set of problems, which is you're not, drinking the coffee in a way that it could be really beneficial to your health. The reason I say that this is sort of a very important but an easy solution is simply this. All we need to do as consumers is ask our coffee companies to prove that they've been tested for mold and mycotoxins to be free of mold and mycotoxins. Of all the things that we do, our North Star was, every decision based on health, no compromise. The testing for mold and mycotoxins is the easiest test. A whole container costs $200 to test. but a lot of reasons why companies don't choose or importers choose not to test for mold and mycotoxins is because the standards in Europe with the food regulatory organizations and in Asia exist where they don't exist in the US. So the FDA doesn't have any ochratoxin A requirements or standards for importing coffee. So if you've got coffee that necessarily has problems, let's say in Latin America, a Brazilian coffee, it's a great coffee, but it's not going to pass the standards in Europe, you send it to the US, and because they don't have those standards. So the reason I say it's important is because it really does affect a lot of people. The reason I say it's easy is it's just a $200 test, and you reject coffee that doesn't reach those standards. As consumers, we should ask every coffee company to test for mold and mycotoxins and guarantee that it's free of that.
Yeah, and I think, too, the other thing is that you can get an organic coffee that's not doing this. So, that's what makes it hard on the consumer, right? Because you need to ask multiple questions here, but they're important questions to ask. And I've asked it of some coffee places that I know, and they're like, yeah, no, we don't test, or sometimes they do test, but it's not third-party tested, which I know is a different even standard alone. Is yes, you might be testing it, but it's different when a third party gets involved. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and you can find organic coffee, which is great. It deals with one of the problems, but then organic specialty grade coffee is more difficult to find, and want to avoid those defects. Then organic specialty grade, and it's tested for mold and mycotoxins. That I think is the low bar. That's the table stakes for coffee and health. And yes, and I think third-party testing is crucial, just because I think we should all feel comfortable that our food is following food safety practices, and we adhere to those guidelines. Even if the government doesn't ask us to adhere to those guidelines, I think we should all have standards in an industry to make sure that your coffee is safe.
Yeah, it's so true, and it's like that in a lot of things, right? And in the U.S., we're not really up to speed on these standards, and it's very different in other countries. Can you talk about some of the specific research that has inspired your approach to creating healthy coffee and how you have incorporated these findings into the products that you do have?
I think I was very lucky in the beginning because I didn't have a coffee background. I could start with a clean sheet of paper. So what I was fascinated with is that there was no coffee that was focused on health. And so I was introduced to Professor Adriana Ferrar from the University of Brazil in Rio, and she's the head of nutrition there. And she's probably one of the leading, in the top 3 to 5 people in the world on the health benefits of coffee. So I started working with her as a consultant. It was meant to be a 2-month project. I was just really trying to get my questions answered. Led to 18 months where we made every decision based on health. And so that's the easy thing for us is that we had a bit of a North Star, and that North Star is we would make every decision based on health without compromise. And so a lot of these decisions aren't complicated. They're just ones that you have to take with a clean sheet of paper and have no vested interest in producing coffee that's either tastes a certain way or costs a certain level. We wanted to find that what coffee we could produce, where if every decision was based on health, would it be $200 a bag? Would it taste like ditch water? Would it be incredible? We didn't know. And so I think that's one of the big benefits. We could start from fresh, and those decisions became pretty obvious. I mean, organic versus crops that are chemically treated, of course, it's organic. Specialty grade is the highest grade. Yeah, we want specialty grade. If the coffee has got the highest amount of chlorogenic acids, which we know is a health benefit, we want the most of those possible. So we lab test around the world for coffees that reach the highest level and only pick that. So, this roasting protocol, we wanted to roast to maintain those antioxidants. So I guess, just having that sort of North Star made things, relatively easy for us.
Yeah, and if I could share a little bit about my coffee story involving you, and I know you and I have just met, but I feel like I know you because I've been having Purity for 2 years, and for me, it was my way to be able to have coffee. I had ochratoxin A, and Dr. Cole, Dr. Will Cole treats me, and I also am a health coach for Dr. Cole. And when I was a patient, the ochratoxin, one of the big things was coffee. And I had to give up coffee for a little while I was resetting my gut. And when I could bring it back, Purity was one of the brands that was suggested to me.
Yeah.
I was able to find a roast I loved, like a dark roast, which was ease, but also not only was it ease for me in the roast kind, but it was ease because I used to be someone who, when I did have coffee, had digestive issues every time I had coffee, especially if I had it on an empty stomach. Yeah. I have never, if I say didn't have my Purity coffee for a couple days, I have never gotten a headache, a caffeine headache. And yeah. I don't know if that has to do with the other blends and the quality that we're talking about here, but my story goes to the ease, and I love the fact that you have these different blends that serve different health purposes. So maybe you could go into a little bit of that to make people understand how the different blends accomplish different health purposes.
Sure. So the starting point is this, that there's an umbrella level of standards that we want all of our coffees to adhere to. So, the organic, regeneratively farmed, Smithsonian bird friendly, there's a lot of things that we look for. But what's interesting about coffee for particular ailments, and we're in the first rung of the ladder. I mean, we can follow the science to the letter, but there's still a lot of unknowns because there's a lot of variables. Your body is different, the amount of coffee you drink, the way you prepare it. So what we've done is we follow the science on what the likely effects are and what we should care about for various sort of concerns. So let's take the Ease coffee. That's a darker roast coffee. Some people like a darker roast coffee, but the problem is the darker you roast the coffee, the more you roast away the antioxidants. So we use a Loring smokeless roaster, maintains the antioxidants, but also what's interesting is the darker you roast the coffee, the chlorogenic acids, which are the antioxidants, turn into chlorogenic lactones, which go through the blood-brain barrier. So they're better for health, and they're also, the science is pointing to dementia, Alzheimer's, that a darker roast coffee, as long as you're not creating, it's called PAHs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons from any burnt food. As long as you don't get to that level where you're over roasting the coffee and you're creating chlorogenic lactones, then it's going to be better for brain health and gut health. And so that's why we roast the coffee that way. And we share all our statistics and all our numbers because we want people to collaborate with us. We want people to say, this is what's working for us, and anecdotally, if it's working. And so we're getting a lot of that positive feedback. Flow is a coffee which is focused on just overall high antioxidant coffee, none of the problems with mold mycotoxins that we talked about earlier. The Protect coffee for the liver, basically we look at two areas that we're focused on here. One is the processing of the coffee. So it's a honey processing method, which is where the fruit actually stays on the coffee bean as it dries. And so you have to be very careful about food safety standards, but it creates a coffee which is a little fruitier, easier to drink because volume is important with the liver. And so also it's a lighter roast, a lot lighter than the flow coffee, which means it's the highest in antioxidants. So we're trying to dial up and look at things like the CGAs in the coffee, the high level of antioxidants, and also cafestol, cawiol are really important for the liver. Freshness is very important.
Yeah, and I think you led me to my next question. I thought what was really cool is companies like yourself, you're in a position where you're able to tackle causes that are near and dear to your heart. And I thought this summer I saw your Alzheimer's initiative with that medium roast that you were promoting, and that you're giving that money to the Alzheimer organization, and profit from that. So I thought it was awesome because it's a disease that's very personal to me, like so many people out there right now. There's many of us that have had someone in our life that Alzheimer's has touched all of us, and I think it's really important. And I lost a really good friend to that, and so I would like for you to talk about what you were able to do with that, and how that coffee, you touched on it a little bit, but how that connecting coffee and supporting brain health went together for a good cause for you.
I think, and I have the same personal story. My father-in-law died of dementia, and was really struggling with, obviously the loss of memory and just, the quality of life. And I just feel like, and I know you feel the same way, food is medicine. what we put in our bodies, what we eat, is going to have a direct impact to our overall health. And the studies on coffee and its impact with Alzheimer's are pretty profound. In fact, I've spent a lot of time talking to Dr. David Perlmutter, who's really one of the leading authors and doctors in this particular area, just about how profound coffee could be. So here's something that people do every single day. They could actually improve the quality of that coffee when it comes to brain health. And they don't necessarily do it because they're not aware of this. So what we're trying to do is increase awareness that, and by all means, drink our coffee, but drink other coffees as well. I mean, it's not exclusive to our coffee. We reduce the bad things and maximize the good things. But I think what's most important is that people understand food is medicine, and they should be drinking coffee if they've got an Alzheimer or a dementia concern, because it's one thing that you can do that really can have an impact. Even Dr. Sanjeev Chopra is on our advisory board, and he's a liver surgeon. And he says, in 35 years, he's never seen anyone with end-stage liver disease who drinks 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day. That's not common knowledge. Liver surgeons understand that, but I guess awareness around the health benefits of coffee is important. And then that next step, which is the awareness, but also the understanding of what makes a difference.
Yeah, the blend is delicious too. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the initiative, and any coffee that I sold during that time. Even as a full disclosure, I am an affiliate of Purity because I want to be involved with companies that other people can use. I don't get involved with a company whose product I don't use or whose product I haven't checked out. Anything that I got from any sales during that time, I donated also, just to follow your lead in the cause. And I just love that you're able to do these things. You touched on something too that I think is really important, is people can get the benefits of some of these antioxidants even if they can't have the caffeine. Mm-hmm. But there is a decaffeinating process that is involved with decaffeinated coffee that can cause issues also. So can you talk about what someone who might need to have decaf coffee might need to look out for? Because I think you need to ask more questions of the coffee that you're drinking that's decaffeinated, because that process alone could cause some issues.
Absolutely. I mean, it took us a couple of years before we even came out with a decaffeinated version, because we wanted to lab test the 4 different methods of decaffeinating coffee. So there's, ethyl acetate, there's Swiss water, there's critical CO2. There's various methods of decaffeinating coffee, but one of the primary concerns is the 2 methods. So Swiss water and critical CO2 are the best 2 methods to decaffeinate coffee, and I'll go into the details about why. The other 2 methods leach antioxidants, and they're also chemical. So you're introducing chemicals, which you shouldn't introduce, and you're leaching the antioxidants in the coffee. So we use Swiss water process, and the reason we use that is because it's natural. It's just basically using warm water. It's an activated carbon filter that basically takes the molecules of the caffeine and filters it out. It's 99.8% caffeine free. But the reason why I think it's really important is because the health benefits of coffee don't come from the caffeine. In a very few instances they do. Parkinson's, for example, there's a few instances, there's some argument about the liver health, and also using coffee for enemas. There's an argument that caffeine helps. But in most cases, it's the chlorogenic acids in the coffee. And if they're retained in a decaf coffee, and you can now drink a cup of coffee at night, or you can drink an extra cup of coffee you wouldn't normally drink, that's going to be good for your overall health. So having a decaffeinated version that's good for your health is sort of important.
Yeah, I think it is important, because people will steer away from coffee from that, because it's like I'm so glad you're pointing this out. There is a huge difference between the antioxidant benefits and just the caffeine. And the folks that are drinking the caffeine just for the energy and because they didn't sleep well last night are missing out on the real, to me, heart of the reasons to drink coffee. I did not grow up a coffee drinker, much like you. I literally was like, I thought coffee tasted terrible when I was younger. And as I gravitated away from the drinks that I started drinking when I was first having coffee, which were, I won't say the company, but they're sugar-filled, drinks. And most of the time, too, the problem's not the coffee. The problem's of what these folks are putting in the coffee. Yep. So drinking black coffee, if you can get yourself to a point to do that, which now I love black coffee, I love a cold brew, I think drinking black coffee has by itself too has a lot of health benefits. So I want to maybe touch on that with you, that make a reminder to people that you can make a cup of coffee unhealthy if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this, about the fact that, if you drink a good purity coffee and next to another coffee, most coffee you can't drink black, but you can drink purity coffee black. It's well worth trying, because really good coffee doesn't have that sort of acidic, burnt taste, that acrid taste. One of the problems that in the coffee industry for these very big chains that you talked about is they want the coffee that you try locally to taste the same way as the coffee in Singapore or another place in Europe. So they want to have this uniform taste, and the best way to get a uniform taste is to over roast it so that you're used to that taste of really what is burnt coffee. And that's what it creates this sort of like this negative reaction. I need to drink put milk and sugars and that sort of thing to disguise the taste. If you've got great quality coffee, you don't need to disguise it. And in fact, I think what's interesting is you're a bit of a purist. I mean, I feel like, decaf drinkers are really the people who are drinking coffee for its benefits, because they're not drinking it for the caffeine part. They're drinking it because they enjoy the taste and the feeling and the health benefits. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why as a group, we're very conscious about how we decaffeinated our coffee, and basically the level of coffee used. So most coffee companies use the throwaway coffee. I mean, it's starting to get stale. It's 15 months old or 12 months old. Let's send a few sacks for decaffeination because these people won't notice. We use the highest grade, specialty grade, organic coffee. It's fresh. It's literally weeks off shipping, and it's sent straight to Swiss Water for decaffeination. So we use the highest level, and that shows in the coffee. So
yeah, we have folks, in one of our programs with the clinic with Dr. Cole, we tell folks to eliminate caffeine in the first 30 days. And, we suggest, if someone will say, well, undoubtedly ask, well, can I have decaffeinated coffee? And we're like, it depends on the brand. Again, you need to, that's when I became aware of the decaffeinating process and what the detriments were of that. So we're helping out our decaffeinated friends who are purists and deserve the best. So I'm glad that we got that info out there. I know for me, I can have a nice little cup of coffee after dinner, and it's not going to affect my bedtime if I have the decaffeinated coffee. I like to just, I certainly use the ease the most because of the, lower acidity and the fact that it doesn't give me digestive issues. I've never gotten digestive issues with any of the others either, but I like to mix it up because I do like tasting the other blends. So, keep an open mind. I think when we become purists, like you're saying, you learn, you can, just like wine tasters will be, you can taste the subtle differences in the blends, and you can really enjoy the different tastes that are out there. I don't know if you're privy to any of this research. I know I'm throwing this in, but I operate in the world of professional golf as my full-time job.
Yeah.
And I've had conversation with Phil Mickelson, who started a coffee company. The reason why he started the coffee company was because he had psoriatic arthritis. And the doctor told him, drink as much coffee as you can, because it reduced his C-reactive protein. And so I think there are some, and I don't have the PubMed studies in front of me, but there is research that if you can drink this black coffee, like you're saying, it really does have anti-inflammatory properties.
Yeah, and for initially when we started looking at all the health benefits of coffee, I couldn't really understand, how it could be affecting liver health and prevention of type 2 diabetes and things like gout and tooth decay and a wide range of health benefits. And of course, later on, I understood that it comes from the antioxidants in the coffee, which reduce inflammation in the body. So a reduction in inflammation wherever it's found in the body is going to be one of the impacts. Unfortunately, I don't think that can even be said. I mean, in terms of, I don't think that we have to be very careful about, making any links to food and anti-inflammation. But it's just, it seems to me a little bit crazy that there are foods that will reduce inflammation in your body, and you need to source those out.
Yeah, he was big on it, and that's the reason why he started the company he did, and why he does have his own coffee brand. What's your favorite way then, Andrew, to consume some coffee? Now that you're one of us, what's your favorite way to consume some coffee?
I typically, I'll drink regular coffee until about 12. Then I'll switch. As I'm getting older, switch to decaf in the afternoon, just so it doesn't affect my sleep. I'm not really. I don't have this very sophisticated setup. I might use a Chemex pour over in the morning. I like the ritual of coffee. I like that first thing in the morning, making a cup of coffee for my wife and daughter if I can catch it before she goes to school. Just a pour over and then tasting different coffees. And I also have the benefit of trying new versions of coffees that we're experimenting with and farms we're trying to consider. So, but yeah, I'm very old school. It's the Chemex pour over most often.
My husband likes the French press, so he'll use some in a French press. Sometimes the fact that you're one of the only companies that has this kind of coffee in a K-cup is a lifesaver for me, because sometimes when I'm in a hurry, the K-cups are a lifesaver. I've also taken the K-cups to use, even like the blend for the Alzheimer's research. I've taken that, and ground the coffee and then put it in. You can get a K-cup that you can put your own, grind in. So I do. You touched on it, though. The ritual is a big deal. And so one of the things I found myself grieving a little bit was the process of going to a coffee shop and just enjoying the atmosphere, because now I'm so careful about what I have. You're right. There is a ritual involved with coffee that's important.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I suppose it's sort of like, you transfer one ritual to another, and I don't miss the ritual of a coffee shop or, just because I think I would prefer to have a really amazing coffee at home than something that's disappointing when I travel. I mean, so that's a bit of the problem. I revert to being a tea drinker when I travel.
Yeah, and I think, too, one of the things that's helped me a lot is the fact that I can travel with the packets that are like a tea bag. So that's what I do, because I do travel some for work, but I do work from home. So that's why I miss sometimes getting out to a coffee shop, because sometimes you get inside these walls and you're like, okay, I need to get out a little bit, so I do miss that. But I am thankful that you have the ways that we can take it on the road with you.
One thing, so this is because you now get a sneak preview. We're actually going to come out with a soluble coffee, which is our coffee soluble in an instant, basically, and it's cold brewed and then flash frozen. So it's amazing to deal with that travel problem.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Thank you for giving us that. That feels like a big privilege that you give me that, and that also sounds perfect for me. So that gets me fired up.
Yeah, you'll love it. It's great.
Well, we're going to offer folks a discount that listen to this podcast, but I want to first allow people to hear how to connect with you and the brand and where they can learn more about what we've talked about today.
Yeah, just come to puritycoffee.com, and I think your code is Coach Christie, is that right, for 20%?
Yes.
And really take a deep dive into coffee. We've tried to be as transparent as we possibly can be about the health benefits of coffee, the studies that support that, and also take a look at, we've now got, I'm so happy about this, but we've now got 34,000 testimonials with a rating of 4.9 stars. So, I mean, it's like, anecdotally, just read through some of the responses so you can get a feel for whether this is the right thing for you.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think you touched on it, right? Knowledge is power. Just know the information. And I think part of what we're doing here today that people, it's awareness. You can choose to drink whatever you would like to drink, but you should know what you're drinking would be our pitch in general.
Yeah, agreed.
Andrew, I really appreciate you coming on. I hope that I didn't take up too much of your time on a busy day, but you can come back and visit anytime. We can talk coffee all the time.
Excellent. I appreciate you having me on the program.
That's a wrap for this episode of Ripple Effect Connection. We hope you enjoyed our discussion on how to connect coffee and health. A big thank you to Andrew Salisbury of Purity Coffee for joining us. We appreciate him taking the time out to join the podcast, and I certainly know you will never look at your morning cup of coffee the same again. Now that you've been inspired, here's my call to action for you. Take a moment to reflect on the insights and wisdom shared. Take inventory of what's on the shelves of your pantry and in your coffee cup each day. How can you apply these lessons to your own health and well-being? I'm always up for talking about coffee or anything else. I'd love to hear from you, so connect with me on social media and let me know what resonated with you. Reach out on Instagram at Whole Health Christy. You can also get the full show notes for this episode and any others on my website at christyhugic.com/podcast. Next, spread the inspiration. Like, follow, review, and share this podcast with others who may benefit from this information. Stay tuned for the next episode of Ripple Effect Connection. Let's create waves of change together.